Hi everyone, greetings from National Skills Network. This is Madhuri, and today I have with me Miss Judie Kay, who's from WACE. Let me tell you more about Miss Judie before we proceed with a very interesting conversation we are going to have today on work-integrated learning, which I think is a global priority now, considering that we all understand academic learning alone is not making much sense for youth employability, and degrees alone are not going to help us. So Ms. Judie is an expert in work integrated learning, and she is the vice chair for partnerships and programs at WACE, and she's also an executive committee member. So WACE stands for World Association of Cooperative and Work Integrated Education. So I'm so glad to have you today on this talk, Ms. Judie. So let me get started by asking you about the importance of work integrated learning today in enhancing youth employability. So you can probably share your experience about implementing projects, and you being from Australia, and India and Australia already have quite a few collaborations in higher education. So perhaps we can learn more from the Australian perspective as well.
Well, Madhuri, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Very exciting to talk to you about one of my favourite topics, work integrated learning. Increasingly, I can talk from Australian perspective, but also in my role at WACE from a global perspective. Work integrated learning is becoming really critical in higher education and in technical and vocational education, because it gives those students that combination of practice and learning. So they're able to get experiences in an authentic, work-related, either placement, project, whatever. So they get real experience. And this is really important because around the world, in Australia as well, but particularly at the moment in Australia, there's a focus on universities producing the talent that's required for the good of the country, for the economic growth of the country. And I see that in countries all over the globe. It's the same, the same pressure to do that.
Yeah. So we understand that today this is much needed, as you just told us. But when you look at the entire scenario of work integrated learning and also work-based learning, looks like there are a lot of terminologies which are overlapping, and there are apprenticeships, there are internships. And in India, we also have now higher education programs which have a job-oriented element in it. So maybe you can throw some light on what are these overlaps and how different is work integrated learning from, let's say, other forms of learning like work-based learning and apprenticeships.
Well, again, this is a topic, I've worked in this area for over 2 decades, and this is a conversation we all have because the terminology can be quite confusing. So from my perspective, and I just, when you look at the OECD or the International Labour Organization, they refer to work-based learning more like placements, apprenticeships in the workplace. Now, from my perspective, work integrated learning or work integrated education is a broader concept, because students can still do things that there's some aspects for work integrated learning and work-based learning that are similar. The work has to be meaningful, it has to be linked to their studies, and there has to be employer involved. But it does not have to be in the workplace. The work integrated learning, from my perspective, is a broader term because it involves industry projects, it can involve virtual experiences. So it's a broader term. But from my perspective, the most important thing to focus on is to make sure that the students are undertaking something that's authentic, linked to their learning, and that there are real clients, industry partners involved, and it can take many forms.
Yeah.
So I think the definitions, I'll leave that for other people to discuss. That's where my focus is giving students those real experiences.
Yeah, and the most important word which you just mentioned is industry collaboration, sending students to get work exposure in the industry. I think this is something we in India are really grappling with in one sense, because as you understand, it's not very easy to get industry collaboration for various types of learning. There are several rules and regulations and things. So maybe from your experience, you could share few insights about how does one establish these sustainable industry collaborations and relationships? Because if we say work integrated, and if we don't have industry collaboration or academia and institution partnership, then this exercise is not going to be very meaningful, right? So maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So first of all, the very first thing is to make sure that industry, well, first of all, industry is always looking for talent. And
Yeah.
so this is a vehicle to get access to talent. And so that's the first thing. It's in industry's interest to be involved. That's the first thing. The second thing is then it's up to the universities or the tertiary educational to manage those partnerships. And we need to make it as simple for industry to be involved as possible. We need to build models or work integrated learning models or work-based models, whatever they are, that work for those industry sectors. So we need to manage those partnerships well. We need to communicate with our partners really well. We need to be adaptable and responsive to our industry partners. And I would always suggest start with your alumni, because your alumni already are your partners. And there's some other things around partnerships that I could go into, but those are the fundamental things. And the important thing is to also prove to industry that this works.
Yes.
It works. It works for all the stakeholders. And so it's no good us talking to industry. It's much better to get other industry partners to talk to industry. So in our country, we partner with the peak industry associations, who are enormous advocates for work integrated learning, because they understand it works, and we measure the impact and we can show it works. And that's what really helps industry to get on board.
Yeah, very rightly you said about convincing them. And also in India, we also have the issue of the small and medium-sized industries which employ a lot of people. As you know, we call it MSME sector. And currently, there is also a push for these industries to join this entire movement of work integrated education. So let's hope that, it materializes in much more productive ways. Yeah, so
can I just add something there, Madhuri? Australia has 99% of our companies are SMEs, 99%. And so having models that work integrated learning models that might be short projects or other ways of working with those SMEs is the way to get them on board, I think.
Yeah, right. You also mentioned about few projects when we were talking about your, initiatives and your work in this field. So maybe we can hear about a story, which is a project implementation story from your side. And also probably the audience in India can benefit, from your learnings and whatever observations you have, how you went ahead and implemented the project. So could you please tell us more about implementing work integrated learning?
Right. Well, the most recent one I did is for my organisation, the World Association. We implemented a work integrated learning experience for students called Global Challenge. Global Challenge brings together students from a range of countries working in teams with a client on a project, and it's 1 month long. All right. But we applied the same principles to designing them that we would do in designing any work integrated learning. And we're very lucky in Australia, we have a quality framework for our work integrated learning, and we can draw on the Canadian quality framework and other quality frameworks. Essentially, when we're doing that, we need to design it in there's three stages that we need to look at. The first stage is we need to prepare all all the parties involved. We need to prepare the students. We need to give the industry, we need to prepare the industry. We need to make sure that whatever the activity is relevant for the student. So there's the preparation component to make sure everybody's prepared. Then in making sure that then the student might start to undertake either a placement or a project with industry, and you support both the industry partner and the student during that experience, making sure that they're learning, that they've got good learning outcomes, that the industry feels supported, that there are no issues. So making sure that that component is really looked after. And then the third stage always is sort of after the work integrated learning placement project, whatever it is over, and ensuring that the student can reflect on their learning and understand what they've learned, and that we go back to the industry partner and we learn any feedback that we get. So we always think of it in 3 stages. So there are always challenges that you need to overcome. And also in designing one of these work integrated learning experiences, you always want to design it so that it meets the needs of all the stakeholders. So when we designed Global Challenge, it was to enable students from around the world to get a global experience without leaving home, because many of them can't afford to or are unable to travel. And so we looked at that challenge and overcome it by using a virtual experience. But we made sure still that all those 3 aspects were taken care of, that students were prepared, that they were supported during their experience, and they reflected on their experience at the end, and the same for the industry partner. So I think there's obviously a lot more to a quality experience, but that's the sort of framework. And while just before I finish, the World Association is developing a global framework for quality work integrated learning, which will be available in the next number of months. And so that will give access for countries or areas that don't have their own quality framework to guide their own development of work integrated learning experience.
So is it like a qualification framework, what we have in India, or is it a slightly different kind of thing?
No, it's more for educators when they're developing work integrated learning experiences, so that they can work through all the different components that are needed to ensure that students have a quality experience.
Okay.
But this framework that we're going to develop is quite high level, because then you would need to have a look at it in relation to your own Indian regulatory frameworks, just like we'd need to look at it for our Australian. So we've designed it really context-free, if you like, so that each country, wherever they are in Africa or Asia or wherever, can look at it and apply it in their own context.
Okay, that's really interesting. And before we close, I have another crucial question for you. Since we are talking about also the potential for India and Australia to collaborate in implementing work integrated learning, is there something you would like to share with people who would be interested perhaps in reaching out to you? And you also have Indian exposure about how the higher education, is implemented in India, how we are now focusing on job-oriented courses. So in this context, is there something you can share with our audience?
Well, I would just say that the World Association really is the peak body for work integrated education, work integrated learning in the world. And so we bring together all the researchers and expertise. I'm based in Australia, but we have colleagues all over the world, and we would welcome engagement in any way from people. We already have members from India in our association, and there's a whole range of services and programs and advice conferences that we offer that help people in developing their programs and ensuring the quality of their programs. So we have professional development, we have research symposiums, we have the Global Challenge, which I've talked about, we have conversations and networks and online discussion groups. So all of that's available, and I'm very happy also to answer questions or support anybody in India, and I am looking forward to learning more as I go on this journey from the Indian experience, because you learn so much when you find out what's happening in other countries.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ms. Judie, thank you so much. I think that was a very enlightening, session. I think we got to learn quite a few things, not just about the Australian system, but like you said, the focus is now on world, and many initiatives are taking place at the global level, where we are looking at global standards and global quality frameworks and so on. Thanks a lot for giving us your time today, and we would be happy to be in touch with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.